Chilling tales from haunted towns. In the quiet corners of the world, nestled between dense forests, mountain ranges, or secluded lakes, there lie towns that seem forgotten by time. Yet these places are haunted by whispers, by rumors, and by the unexplainable. People who venture there often do not return the same. Some vanish without a trace. Others, though they walk out with their bodies intact, lose something far more precious, something no one can truly describe. The only thing certain is that the town's secrets always remain buried in the shadows, waiting for the curious and the foolish to uncover them. The forgotten town of Black Hollow. Black Hollow had always been a place of mystery. Shrouded in thick mist and surrounded by towering pines, this small, isolated town was far removed from the bustling cities and villages nearby. Stories of the town's eerie past had been passed down through generations, and every resident who grew up there knew one unspoken rule: never venture out at night. For years, travelers and even locals had heard the strange whispers. They spoke of faces in the windows, flickers of movement in the fog, and the feeling of being watched, even when no one was around. But despite the unsettling reputation, Black Hollow was still a place that needed to be explored. And so, one fateful evening, a young journalist named Clara, intrigued by the stories and determined to uncover the truth, decided to visit the town. The arrival. Clara's car rolled down the long, lonely road toward Black Hollow just as the sun began to set. The light from the fading day seemed to evaporate, swallowed up by the dense fog that surrounded the town. As she drove into the small, weathered town square, her headlights flickered and then went out completely. The sudden darkness felt unnatural. Clara could almost hear the sound of the fog pressing against the town, a cold, suffocating force that seemed to be smothering the life out of the place. She felt a knot in her stomach, but she brushed it off, attributing it to the long drive and the isolation of the town. The streets were eerily quiet. No dogs barked, no distant sounds of life echoed in the air. The buildings stood in shadow, their windows dark and unwelcoming. Clara parked her car outside the only inn in town and made her way inside. The innkeeper's warning. The innkeeper, an elderly woman named Mabel, welcomed Clara with a thin, nervous smile. She seemed pleasant enough, though there was a tremor in her voice as she spoke. "You'll be staying in room 4, Mabel said. "It's the only room we have available. Don't mind the sounds from the walls. Old houses make strange noises, especially when the fog rolls in." Clara smiled politely, but a chill ran down her spine. She asked if Mabel had lived in Black Hollow her whole life. "Oh, yes. Yes, I have," Mabel replied, her eyes briefly darting to the window. "But you should leave before nightfall. The town, it's not safe after dark. You'll see things you can't unsee." Clara laughed nervously, chalking it up to the woman's age. "I'm sure it's all just ghost stories, right?" Mabel didn't respond. Instead, she handed Clara the key to room 4 and left without another word. Clara's curiosity was piqued, but she was determined to stay. She was here for a reason: to uncover the truth. Strange occurrences. That night, Clara settled into a room. It was small, with faded wallpaper and a creaky wooden floor. As she lay on the bed, she could hear the wind howling outside, the trees scraping against the building, and the soft, rhythmic tick of an old clock. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the room, followed by a soft scratching sound, as though something was moving within the walls. Clara's heart skipped a beat. She got up and inspected the room, but found nothing out of the ordinary. She tried to shake off the feeling of dread that was creeping up on her, but the sounds didn't stop. The scratching grew louder, almost as if it were trying to get closer. Clara grabbed her flashlight and, with shaky hands, pointed it toward the dark corners of the room. The beam of light landed on a large wooden wardrobe standing against the far wall. The scratching was coming from inside. The secret of room 4. Clara hesitated, her breath quickening as the noise from the wardrobe grew louder, more frantic. She approached the wardrobe slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. With trembling fingers, she reached for the handle and pulled it open. To her horror, there was nothing inside. No rats, no creatures, just empty space. But as she looked closer, she noticed something written in chalk on the back wall. There, with great effort, "The shadows know your name." The scratching noise stopped abruptly. Clara stumbled back, her heart racing. The room fell eerily silent. Her instincts told her to leave, to get out of this town and never look back. But her journalistic curiosity kept her rooted to the spot. She had come for the truth, and now she was closer to uncovering it than ever. The Curse of Black Hollow. The next morning, Clara ventured out into the town, her mind still reeling from the events of the previous night. She decided to speak with some of the townsfolk, hoping to piece together the mystery of Black Hollow. The first person she spoke to was an elderly man sitting on a bench near the town square. His face was gaunt, his eyes shadowed with years of pain. "Are you looking for the truth?" he asked cryptically. "Everyone who seeks the truth in Black Hollow ends up losing something. The town doesn't like outsiders." Clara pressed him for more information, and he finally relented. It started with the disappearance of children. The first was in 1897. The town believed the shadows themselves were alive, watching, waiting. And when they grew tired of waiting, they took the children. The more people tried to leave, the stronger the shadows grew. The man paused, his eyes flickering toward the trees. "The shadows know your name, just like the walls of room 4. They remember who you are." The shadows unleashed. That evening, Clara decided to explore the forest that bordered Black Hollow. The fog was thicker now, swirling around her, making it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. As she walked deeper into the woods, the silence grew oppressive. Suddenly, she heard it, footsteps behind her. She spun around, but there was no one there. Yet she could feel eyes watching her, shadows moving in the fog. Her flashlight flickered, and when it came back on, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Dozens of faces, pale, twisted faces pressed against the trees, their eyes glowing in the darkness. The shadows whispered her name. Clara ran, her heart pounding in her chest. The trees closed in around her, their branches reaching for her like long skeletal hands. Every step she took, the shadows seemed to follow, growing closer, moving faster. The final revelation. Clara barely made it back to the town, her body shaking with fear. She was sure she had seen the spirits of those who had vanished over the years, trapped in the town's curse, bound to the shadows that haunted it. As she reached the inn, the door swung open on its own. Mabel stood there, her face pale, her eyes filled with a sorrowful understanding. "You've seen them, haven't you?" she whispered. Clara nodded, too terrified to speak. Mabel took her hand gently. "The shadows are hungry, Clara. They've always been hungry. But now they've found you. And once they know your name, they'll never let you go." With a sudden, sharp movement, Mabel slammed the door shut. Clara's screams were swallowed by the darkness. The legacy of Black Hollow. Years passed, and Black Hollow faded from memory. Those who lived to tell the tale spoke in hushed tones, warning others to stay far away. But the town remained, its shadows growing ever darker, its secrets never fully revealed. And somewhere, in the depths of the fog, Clara's name was whispered by the shadows, a reminder that once the town knows you, it will never forget. Creepy exploration of Old Paulding Jail. What lurks in the shadows? The old Paulding jail stands as a dark reminder of history's once sturdy walls, now decaying with the passage of time. Hidden in the small town of Paulding, Ohio, this dilapidated building has witnessed years of suffering, torment, and unspeakable events. Its eerie presence looms over the town, casting a shadow that no one seems able to escape. The stories surrounding it are enough to send a chill down anyone's spine. And tonight, we're about to uncover the terrifying secrets that linger within its walls. The First Impressions, a dark and foreboding building. It was late evening when a small group of adventurers, armed with cameras and flashlights, decided to explore the infamous Old Paulding Jail. As they approached the building, the wind began to howl, whipping through the tall trees that surrounded the property. The jail itself stood at the end of a narrow, winding road, barely visible beneath the heavy cloak of fog that had rolled in from the nearby river. The building itself was an architectural nightmare, crumbling brick walls, shattered windows, and an iron door that hung loosely on its hinges. The air felt dense, almost suffocating, as if the very atmosphere was laden with the weight of the past. The sound of their footsteps echoed loudly in the silence, each step feeling as though it was drawing them deeper into an abyss. A history of suffering. To understand the gravity of what was to come, they needed to understand the history of the jail. Built in the mid-1800s, the Paulding Jail was once a place of unspeakable horrors. Over the decades, it had housed some of the most dangerous criminals of its time. There were tales of brutal interrogations, ghostly apparitions of the souls who had passed in its cells, and rumors of dark rituals that were performed in the bowels of the building. It wasn't just the criminals who suffered here. Those who worked within the walls of the jail, guards, wardens, and even visitor shed, reported disturbing encounters. Some claimed they had seen shadowy figures moving along the walls, while others spoke of cold spots that appeared out of nowhere, the hairs on their necks standing on end. As the group stepped into the building, the temperature seemed to plummet. A coldness enveloped them, a stark contrast to the warmth of the evening air. The doors creaked as they pushed them open, revealing the dark hallways inside. The shadows stir. Unseen forces begin to manifest. The deeper they ventured into the building, the more they felt the unsettling presence of something otherworldly. Their flashlights flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move just beyond their vision. In the corners of their eyes, they caught glimpses of shapes human-like figures, standing still in the darkness, watching them. But when they turned their lights toward the figures, there was nothing there. Suddenly, the group heard a loud, echoing bang from deep within the jail. Startled, they turned toward the sound, but all they could see was a long corridor stretching into darkness. As they cautiously walked toward the sound, the temperature dropped even further. They could see their breath fogging up in the air. It felt as though they were walking through a graveyard of memories, each footstep a reminder of the pain and fear that had once filled these walls. The cold cell block, the ghost of the warden. The group entered the old cell block, where the worst of the prisoners had once been kept. The rusted bars of the cells seemed to groan under their weight, their decay mirroring the rotting spirits that inhabited the building. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and dust, but there was something else, something metallic, almost like blood. The flashlight beams danced across the walls, revealing strange markings carved into the stone, as if someone or something had been desperately trying to leave a message. As they moved deeper into the cell block, a shadow darted past them, just out of sight. They froze, heartbeats thundering in their chests, but when they looked around, they saw nothing. The group's leader, Sarah, took a deep breath and whispered, "It's just the wind, we're okay." But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. Then, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the far end of the block. slow and deliberate, like someone or something was walking toward them. The group turned, expecting to see someone, but there was no one. The footsteps continued, getting closer, louder, until it felt as if the sound was right next to them. The silence that followed was deafening. And then, a voice, a low, grating whisper echoed in the darkness. "Leave this place, before it's too late." The wailing spirits, uncovering the truth. A chill ran down their spines as they looked around, trying to make sense of what they had just heard. No one had spoken. The voice seemed to come from the very walls themselves, as though the jail itself was alive, whispering its secrets to them. As the group continued, they stumbled upon a small room in the back of the jail. This room had been locked away for years, but the door had been forced open. Inside, the room was disturbingly intact, filled with old documents and remnants of past life. One photograph, yellowed with age, lay on the floor, showing a man in a warden's uniform, standing in front of a cell. His eyes seemed to pierce through the photograph, as if following them, even in death. Suddenly, the temperature dropped again, and the sound of wailing could be heard from within the walls. It wasn't the cry of a single person, it was as if a crowd of souls was screaming in agony. The group, now visibly shaken, turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind them with an explosive bang. Panic set in as they scrambled to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Through the windows, they saw the faint glow of headlights approaching. Relief washed over them. Help had arrived. But just as they were about to call out, the wailing stopped. The room grew impossibly silent, and the shadows that had been lingering in the corners of their eyes seemed to fade away. The heavy door creaked open on its own, and they stumbled out, gasping for breath. The truth revealed. A curse that won't let go. The group managed to escape the clutches of the old Paulding jail, but the experience left them changed. Weeks later, one of them, Ryan, reported having nightmares of being trapped within the jail. He claimed he could still hear the wailing of the spirits, their desperate cries echoing in his ears. The truth, however, was more sinister than they could have ever imagined. The old Paulding jail wasn't just haunted by the souls of prisoners who had died there, it was cursed by the spirit of the warden himself. It was said that before his death, he had performed dark rituals in the bowels of the jail, trying to keep the souls of the dead from escaping. But instead, he had trapped himself and everyone who ever stepped foot inside within the walls of the jail forever. The group, forever marked by their experience, knew that the old Paulding jail was a place that would continue to haunt them. They had uncovered only the surface of the mystery, and some mysteries, as they soon learned, were never meant to be solved. Conclusion: the jail's shadow lives on. The old Paulding jail still stands today, a dilapidated shell of its former self. And although no one dares enter, the shadows within continue to move, and the whispers of the long-dead warden still echo through the empty halls, waiting for the next group of unwitting souls to uncover its secrets. Those who do often leave the jail behind changed, terrified, and forever haunted by the things that lurk in the shadows.